Hello and welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV. Welcome back to another weekly used gun review. Remember, in these videos I take a small sample of used guns that come into our store during the week and give you a 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 minute review on each one to give you guys a general view of what is in the market, some things you might want to look out for when you are in your local gun store. Keep in mind the point of this video is strictly to be educational. The intent of this video is not to sell anything. So anyway, keeping in accordance with YouTube's policies there. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into it now. Alright, remembering the format of these videos, we start off with the most common and move through the least common, and we do typically do about 8 firearms in each one of these videos. Anyway, starting off with the number 1 spot is a Smith & Wesson SD9 VE. This out of here for you. Now this one here, obviously, as the name would imply, is a 9mm. They also made these in 40. So the first variation of this was known as the Sigma, and that was popular, about in the past 10 or so, between 10 and 15 years ago. What had basically happened with that is Glock had sued them for a patent infringement on the Glock design, and honestly, if you took the Sigma apart and you compared the frames to the Glock frame and the slide to the Glock slide, they were pretty closely related. In fact, these are pretty closely related to the Glock as well. So what happened is Glock sued Smith & Wesson for the Sigma design, and Glock won, and Smith & Wesson had to pay Glock a royalty on every unit they sold. Smith & Wesson quickly redesigned the platform into this, the SD9 VE, which has been on the market now for, I want to say, about 8 or so years. Maybe a little, it's about 8 years is about right. Basically you have the firearm you have today. Now, as far as a value standpoint, these actually are a really good place to start, and one of the most popular firearms that a lot of new shooters get into. So if you are thinking about your first firearm, and I know a lot of you are or have been, or if you know somebody who is, one of these is a great entry-level guns. One of the biggest competitors to this would be like the Taurus G3 or the G2C. So as far as the 9mm goes, you get 2 magazines in the box. They are metal, which is nice, each holding 16 rounds. Semi-automatic, there are no safety features on these other than the trigger safety here, which in the stylizing of Smith & Wesson is more of a hinge type safety here on the trigger. This would be the sort of the precursor to the M&P line. So again, brand new, these are in about the 350-ish range, between 3 and 350. Used, you're going to find them in about the 250 range respectively, in the box with 2 magazines. So for a used value, actually my very first handgun personally was a used 9mm Sigma, and it actually did really well for me. The only complaint that these typically get are the trigger pull weight is very heavy. I know that there are spring kits that you can get to lighten that up, but it is a very gritty and very long and heavy trigger pull. I mean, it's not horrible, but compared to a lot of other things, it's a pretty long and heavy trigger pull. But again, as a starter handgun, these are excellent. Because of the price point, they never last too long. People love to see Smith & Wesson on a $250, $350 firearm. As a new buyer, it's a big company name that everybody knows. So just a great place to start off, a great place to look, and I definitely recommend these for first-time buyers. All right, next up I have another Car Arms, and this one is a P40. Now, over the last couple videos you guys have been watching, I have had a handful of these car pistols in here. Those were typically like the CM9, and I had a 380 as well, CW380. The P40 is one of the more entry-level line from Car in the 40 caliber. Of course, you can get the PM40, the PM9, the PM45, which do typically run about in the $600 to $700 range. Being the P series of P40, these brand new run you in about the $350 to $400. Used, you're going to be somewhere between about 2 and 3, maybe low to mid 2s more often than not. This one does have, somebody just oranged out the front side, but just has its standard sight configuration. Now, this is more of an interesting topic in terms of a 40, and I know that we've had this conversation on these videos before, but the 40 caliber as of late has not been very popular. People have tended to get away from the 40 and go more to the 9 and 45. That tend to go along with a change in the ammunition carried by a lot of local and federal law enforcement agencies. A lot of them seem to at the same time all go to either a 9 or a 45, and the public market seem to follow suit, and this has been about maybe 2 to 3 years ago. So in general, 40s do not sell as well as 9s or 45s, all else being equal. Like if we had two firearms that were exactly the same, say like a Glock 19 and a Glock 23, difference being the caliber, a 9 and a 40, the 40 is going to actually sell for substantially less than the 9mm. So just something to keep in mind. Now there is nothing wrong with the 40, but some testing, and I'm not a big ammunition guy, so as far as ammo testing, that's not something I do personally, but word of mouth is basically defensive loads and defensive technology on defensive ammunition loads in the 9mm has met or exceeded the potential of a 40, plus you're getting higher velocity, more capacity, and less recoil. Also the 40 is pretty snappy, but the point of this is not to get into the caliber debate. I'm just explaining the reasons why the 40 has sort of fallen off in popularity. Now, the Car Series handguns have been great. I actually this summer have been carrying the CM9, I believe it's a CM9 version of this firearm, the 9mm essentially version of this with a slightly shorter barrel. And I've had it out to the range several times to practice with. They are really nice firearms and reliable, 6-round capacity. So I think on the 40, I think it's also, actually, I believe that this is a 5-round. I should have double checked that before starting the video. Yeah, it doesn't say it on the box. I'll roll in at the bottom if I'm wrong, but I believe that this is a 5-round capacity. And this size, of course, the 40 is going to be quite a handful. That's just the nature of the round. It's just a little bit of snappy round, gives you quite a bit of muzzle flip, but that can be controlled with practice. But anyway, for a $200 to $250 price point, really interesting or a good option to consider for pocket carry, especially now when you're in the times of ammo shortages. It is typically a lot easier to find 40 than it is 9 or anything else. 40 actually we've had a pretty consistent supply of. So if you do have 1 or 2 40s in your handgun lineup, it's a good thing to do, because when you get in times like this, you can at least find ammunition for those guns and still go out and shoot and enjoy them and practice and do all that sort of stuff. So anyway, number 2 spot is another car, the P40. Okay, up next I have an ATI 1911. This one is called the Titan. This is basically an officer's model, officer size, 45 1911. Single action only, of course, and the nature of a 1911. Now, when you get into size comparisons, you have the officers usually 3 to 3.5, commanders usually between a 4 and a 4.5, and a government is a 5-inch. Those are typically the 3 sizes you find in a 1911. Now, this being made by ATI, sort of the direct competitor to this would be like a Rock Island 1911, brand new. They all sit in the same ballpark and around the $400 to $500 price point new. Now, both the ATI and the Rock Island 1911s are made in the Philippines. ATI made by SAM and Rock Island made by Arms Corp. So whether or not there is a production overlap there, I am not 100% sure, but they are both made in the Philippines and they both sell at about the same price point, and both of them have a good following. They're both companies, the Rock Islands and the ATI, both are known for being very good 1911s for the money, so you really can't go wrong there. Use something like this, in the officer model there was upgraded sights, new grip skills added, the original ones included here in the box with one magazine. Typically in today's market, about the $400 price point is about where you're going to see those sort of equalize around. Again, not much else to say about it. This has an extended beaver tail, skeletonized hammer and trigger, no over travel adjustment there, upgraded sights, very basic 1911. This is something very typical that you're going to find. And sorry for the background noise, by the way. Andy's out front running the gun store, so you're going to hear beeps as people come in and out. But anyway, it's a very basic, straightforward 1911. Again, if you're looking for concealed carry, the officer's model, it is still a steel frame and slide with a good amount of heft to it. So if you are sensitive to the overall size and weight of the firearm that you're carrying, something like this, an officer model 1911 is not always the best option, but some people genuinely enjoy carrying things like this, and I know several of my customers who do. Typically, you're between about 6 and 8 rounds, depending on the manufacturer and the size of the magazine, 45 ACP. Of course, you're going to get a little bit higher if you're in a 9mm. You can find different manufacturers making 1911s, including the officer size in 9mm. So if you are a fan of 9 and the 45, or I'm sorry, the 1911 frame, you can always do that as well. So again, for about the $400 price point, something like this, a great option. Still good for, home defense and taking to the range is something a little bit different outside of your normal lineup of firearms you target shoot with. So, these things never really last too long. There's always buyers for 1911s in the $400 to $500 price point. So that's why the ATIs and the Rock Islands just seem to do so well, both new and used, and something definitely worth taking a look at. All right, up next is one you guys have probably seen quite often at your local gun stores. This is a 6-hour P365. This one here, the magazine release has been moved to the right-hand side of the pistol because the previous owner is a left-handed shooter. One sort of feature that's becoming very popular on handguns these days is the ability to switch the mag release from left to right. Of course, if you're a left-handed shooter, you can switch that over and be able to use the mag release. It's sort of a standard feature these days on firearms. Anyway, the 365, of course, hit the market with a lot of momentum. Gosh, probably now it's been about a year and a half ago, a year and a half to 2 years ago. They had a really rocky release, if you guys remember the firing pin drag issues that they were having. So they released, there was a lot of anticipation about them, and it took them about 9 years. They did a recall, and then they had to fix the firing pin drag issue, and it took them about 9 months to finally get the new product back out into the marketplace. This was one of those firearms that was like after the initial release and then the problems they were having, I would get 2 to 3 phone calls a day, every day, asking if I had one of these in stock or if I could get one. It was really aggravating that there was so much built up demand, but we couldn't seem to get the products in, and that was that. So it had a really rocky release, but since they've come back out, they have been huge sellers, and I would probably venture a guess to say that lately the 365 has been the best concealed carry firearm seller in our store, even outpacing the first gen Shield with those reduced price promos. They were running like $289 for a brand new one. Now, of course, that's from days in the past. Today, these and even the Smith & Wesson Shields are impossible to find, and when you find them, they're very pricey. So, you know, that's just the climate we're in now, and hopefully that won't last for that much longer. But anyway, the firearm itself, they sort of came out with this whole new concept of the one and a half stack magazine fitting 10 rounds in such a small package. It's a smaller and lighter package than the Shield or the Glock 43, outpacing the competitors by having a larger capacity. The 10 rounds, of course, they've come out with the 12 rounds and now the 15 round magazines. Now, Glock would follow suit with the 43X, and of course now Springfield with the Hellcat, which is a very similar package to this. That holding 11 and 13, I believe, is the mag specs on those. And then there's the new company, I believe, Sheridan Arms, who came out with the 15 round magazine, metal body mag for the Glock 43X, making that a 15 round package. So the ultra light, ultra concealable, and high capacity concealed carry options, it's a very new concept to the firearm industry, with only in about the past year and a half to 2 years, and SIG was definitely the leader on that design idea. So kudos to them on that. It's a really, really good product. I'm sure many of you by now have at least shot one or handled one or seen one or even considered buying one. Typical price on these new is about $5 to $550. Used, you're typically at about the $4 to $450, but right now actually the prices on these, both new and used, is crazy. I'm seeing them on Gunbroker going between $700 and $800, but of course that's not typical. That's just the current demand cycle that we're in. But anyway, if you do see one of these, or you wait, you know, a year or so to get one for $500, $550, they're an excellent buy, a really good firearm. They really are a trailblazer in this design category. So anyway, definitely worth taking a look at. All right, next up I have a Zenith MC14 380. It's a 380 double stack, double single action handgun. So first, Zenith. Zenith is an American company based out of Virginia, and they are an importer of firearms, mainly of those made, I think actually exclusively of those made in Turkey. Now this is actually made by a company called Gerson in Turkey, and they've been around as a company since about the mid-90s. And what you typically find out of Turkish-made firearms is they typically are clones or direct facsimiles of other popular manufacturer designs and feature elements. Most commonly we see this as clones of the CZ style of semi-automatic handguns with the frame wrapped around the slide with the low slide bore axis. You guys have seen some of those that I have had in on these previous videos. Others like this is very much obviously a very close facsimile of the Beretta 84 double stack 380. Now this is a 13+1 capacity. This one here has its box and 4 magazines. Now when these were coming into the country, I don't believe they're actually available right now. Typically you'd find them around the $4 to $450 mark. Right now they're holding most of their value at about the $400 mark as well. They have these in an all black configuration, as well as this sort of chrome slash stainless, bead blasted stainless type of finish. Now the firearms that come out of Turkey, especially their shotguns, are actually regarded as being really good quality for the money. So they are really nice looking. This actually, I have pretty small hands, and this is a very wide grip contour, and actually to me it fits and feels really, really nice. Slide, very smooth. Trigger is actually really good on single action, double action. Again, really, really smooth. They're long travel, but a very smooth and light pull. You feel the wall very obviously right there and breaks nice and cleanly. So, you know, for the money, really, really not a bad handgun. Used, again, about the $400 price point. So, you know, there are other things you can get for $400, but if you are looking for a curiosity, something that's a little bit different than what you have, you know, really not a bad purchase, something that would be interesting to take to the range. Also, in about a 14 round capacity, a really good home defense option, especially if you are prone to recoil sensitivity, given that this is a metal framed, a metal slide firearm with wood grips. There is a good amount of heft to it, and with that 380 round would likely be a very smooth and light shooter. I have not shot this myself, but something very interesting to take a look at, and actually is the only one of these I've ever had in here. Now, speaking of a Beretta Model 84, I have here a Beretta Cheetah Model 84. Now, this design would come out from Beretta in Italy in 1976. They had the Model 81 and 82, which was a 32 ACP, and the 83, the 84, and the 85. And what separated this from the 84, this as the 84 from the 83 and the 85, and all three were 380s by the way, is that the 84 was a double stack, the 83 and the 85 were single stack. Now Beretta is still manufacturing these today, but they do come into the country in very limited numbers. They actually sell upwards in about this right now about the $700 to $800 range. So they actually are not very common and very collectible by some people who like to collect the Beretta style of firearms. You can see the stylizing is very similar to what we're used to on the Beretta M9. It's just all scaled down. Wood slab panel grips on this one. You can get the Beretta sort of the plastic grips with the Beretta logo on them, so they come in a variety of different ways there. This is a double single action with a 13 round double stack magazine. Not much else to say about it, but a very interesting firearm. Lots of people collect these. I do not see them very often. They come into my store every once in a while. I might get one or two of these a year, but they are very cool when they come in. There's always collectors looking for these, and they actually are really good shooters. I have fired a Model 84 before, very smooth and actually very accurate. They're just fun little guns to take out on the range. They've been sort of outpaced by other things if you're looking to buy one from a practical standpoint, but as a collectible or something interesting to take out to the range once in a while, they are a lot of fun. And it's, you know, if you have the opportunity to put one in your collection, I definitely recommend it. Okay, now this one surprisingly is one that you guys have already seen like 2 or 3 times in the past couple months. Surprisingly, I keep getting these in. These are Winchester Model 61s. Now this particular one is a 22 short only, making this actually pretty desirable. Most of them are 22 short, long, and long rifle. This is a short only. This one I dated to about 1957, so post-war. It is a pump action 22 with a 24-inch octagonal barrel. Now this one unfortunately has been drilled and tapped in the top for a scope, and this one has a Weaver K3 scope on it, which is actually correct for the era, so the scope has probably been on it since this was purchased new. It is a tubular fed, like I said, pump action. It does have an internal hammer, and this would harken back to the, like I mentioned before on videos like this, on this one, is it would harken back to the old, you know, carnival and festival days where you could actually find these at a shooting booth, and if you were a 10-year-old kid, you could pay a quarter or whatever to shoot at rubber ducks or the target with the little star on it. You guys know what I'm talking about. And those were typically fired in the 22 short as well. So most of these that you find are in pretty worn condition. This one was probably obviously owned by somebody who was using it for recreational purposes, squirrel hunting or anything like that. So these do actually in good condition command quite a bit of money, upwards of $1,000 or more. Of course, I don't know how the drilling and tapping of the frame is going to affect the value on this one, but had this one not had that done, I would venture, I guess, to say the value on this would be $1,000 or $1,200. But of course, having that scope mounted on top of that is going to hurt the value. But for somebody looking for one as a shooter, maybe somebody who used to have one as a kid, this is a great option. Nothing that's overly collectible, but still would be fun to shoot and own. But anyway, cool to have another Model 61 Winchester in here. Last but not least, I have a Browning A5 Auto 5 shotgun. Now, these are undeniably probably the most prolific and most appreciated, especially semi-automatic shotgun amongst shotgun shooters, collectors, enthusiasts. This is the A5. I mean, this is the one that really set the tone, was the first really commercially successful semi-automatic 12 gauge designed by John Browning. Manufactured mostly, actually entirely, and as far as early production goes, in Belgium. And overall, just an excellent shotgun. Now, this particular one is an early A12, I'm sorry, an A5, made in Belgium, and this one is a light 12. So a little bit, it's built to be a little bit lighter than the standard configuration A5. So for people who are going out hunting and things like that, they want a lighter shotgun. A beautiful blonde finished checkered walnut stock with the knob. I call this a round knob stock, which is just a little bit more rare. I mean, this thing is overall in just phenomenal, excellent condition. Nice scroll work on the metal, all original finish. Now, the A5s, they do vary in price and range pretty substantially. This one is a 27.5-inch vent rib barrel. This is really unupgradable as far as A5s go. Now, you have the Sweet 16 shotguns. Those are 16 gauge, and those the A5s, and those, I've seen those bring about the most as far as at least A5s I've had in here. In the 6 years I've been in business, A5s have actually come in pretty frequently. I've maybe had between 10 or 15 of them since I've been in business. This is one of the nicer ones. Usually they are in pretty rough shape, so it is, it's one of those things that scale pretty quickly. If you have one that's pretty rough and beat up, you typically can find them selling for about $400 to $500, but if they're in really pristine condition, they can get up there in price pretty quickly. Really not much else to say about the A5. There is just a million books and different articles and literature out there on the A5. It's a very popular shotgun, been around for a very long time. It's very iconic by the humped back here in the back. It's kind of the quickest way you can tell you're looking at an A5. Now, Remington did have, I believe it was a licensed copy of this called the Model 11. So you will find those, and those sell for substantially less than an A5 does. But anyway, A5, Auto 5, really, really cool shotguns, and I'm glad to have this one here for the number 8 spot in this video. Well, that is all the time I have for you today in this video. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking this out. If you enjoyed, please let me know by hitting that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And also, if you have any questions, leave those down in the comment section. I'm going to go ahead and sign off with you guys there. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV. I will see you next time.